And this video is about autoimmune diseases and how one achieves an autoimmune diagnosis. And I say this because in the lupus forum, the question was posed, someone posted their lab results, and then they said, I was diagnosed with this. My doctor sending me to a GI doctor. My primary care doctor sending me to a GI doctor, that gastrointestinal doctor, instead of a rheumatologist. So the GI doctor deals with issues within your gut. The rheumatologist deals with arthritis, inflammation, inflammatory type autoimmune disorders, right? Um, so the person posted their labs and everything, and they were like, well, I don't understand. They won't diagnose me as having lupus. They say I need to look at this other thing. So the test that came up is the ANA, the anti-nuclear antibody test. And the primary test was done. And once that test is done, then you have to have titers. And the titers will give you a pattern: double-stranded DNA, centromere, homogeneous, speckled, different patterns. And when the doctor looks at the pattern, then the doctor also has to look at the titer, which means they titer out the antibody and see where the antibody stops reacting. That endpoint becomes the titer. A titer less than a fourfold titer is normally indicative of activity, right? So titers start out at 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, that kind of thing. So you have a baseline, hopefully. Your baseline might be a 1 to 4. You go back later, and now your titer is like 1 to 80, right? So there's a big shift that has occurred. When diagnosing lupus, because this test is not specific for lupus, it is specific for antibody action. A doctor can't look at a positive ANA and say, you got lupus. They then must look at the pattern, and what they have done is, through the studies that they have conducted, they have seen that the double-stranded DNA is more often than not positive, and with a titer of greater than, let's just say, 80, 1 to 80, but it's much higher than that. Each city, they set the standards, but at a certain point the titer is above that level, and most people with lupus have that same result. Then lately, recent last 2-3 years, they're seeing that Epstein-Barr virus, which, yes, the herpes family type of virus, or different things of that nature, they are seeing that a lot of people with lupus also have had Epstein-Barr at some point in their childhood, right? So they're now linking Epstein-Barr with lupus. So when you go to the doctor's going to run all of your laboratory tests, your complete blood count, your chemistries, your these special tests, the ANA, to see if you have titers. The doctor's going to order your analysis to see if you have any inflammation, and they're going to do tests to see if your kidneys are functioning. Sometimes they will order a biopsy. Most of this starts with the lab, but it's not always just with the lab. Sometimes your doctor has to order a CAT scan or MRI. Sometimes they have to look at your brain to see if there's any inflammation or lesions there. Sometimes they have to take a deeper dive into your joints. Sometimes if you have fluid, say on your knee or something, they have to take that fluid and look at it. And the reason this is important is because each one of these things that has to be done requires an appointment. They're never done at the same time. So you can imagine that if you go to the hospital and they say, hey, go see your primary care because you might have some type of autoimmune disorder going on. You get the appointment to go see your primary care. Your primary care says, you know what? I think I need to send you to a specialist. You go to the specialist, and the specialist orders the baseline labs. The specialist gets the labs back and say, ooh, I think I need to do some more labs. And then you go have those other labs done. And then they might say, I think I might need to do an MRI because I might need to rule out some things. Because, like for myself, they thought I had multiple sclerosis. So they're like, okay, we got to go and have a brain scan, a CAT scan done. We got to do all these different things. My nerves weren't working, my muscles, my legs weren't working. So they did all these neurological tests, and Kind of find out, my brain is beautiful. So, in the process, the doctor cannot say that you have lupus because they have a set of criteria, and they have to make sure that you meet a great number of the criteria to say it's lupus instead of rheumatoid arthritis, instead of Sjögren's syndrome. See, there's a lot of other autoimmune disorders that in general they are all inflammatory, but then they act differently, right? So rheumatoid arthritis doesn't produce the butterfly rash that comes in the face. So the doctor has to take all of this information and look at it and say, you have lupus. Now, that would explain why it takes a while to get a diagnosis. Now, because lupus can flare, meaning being active, you might go to the doctor and your ANA might not have a high titer because you're not in the flare. By the time you go to the doctor, you may be out of the flare and your body it's not giving off enough of that anti-nuclear antibody in order to fall into that lupus pattern, right? Most of us have been in situations or circumstances where just so happens we're in the hospital for something critical and now they're ordering the ANA. And prior to the 2015, it wasn't a common thing for an ANA to be done or ordered by just a primary care. It was normally only ordered by specialists. So that's why it took a lot of us, such as myself, to get 20 years or so to be diagnosed. And another thing that happens is, in between all of that time, you have the doctor's appointments that you have to go to, then you have all these other appointments you have to go to. You know they're spread out. They're 3 months apart. They're 6 months apart, right? Time, right? A year, once a year. Monitor it, come back. So you can have an autoimmune disorder without having a diagnosis. And it is better for the doctor to not misdiagnose you than for them, they don't want to start you on medication that is going to really cause you other problems. Because as we see in the lupus form, most people have other problems from the medication. So they don't want to give you something else. Now, I saw someone recently come up and say she was misdiagnosed as having lupus, and now they said she doesn't have lupus, she has something else. That happens a lot. I would encourage you to be patient. In between all of this, yes, I say look for holistic ways to help manage some of the symptoms while you're going through this process. You don't want to take a cancer treatment for lupus when that's not what you have. You don't want them going in and killing cells if they don't have to. And I see some people jumping to just wanting a diagnosis based off of the first initial set of tests, and they are asking people in the comments to diagnose them. The people in the comments can't do that. Even if they are healthcare professionals such as myself, even if I know and I do what your labs mean, I can't give you that in the comment section on a post, right? We have standards that we're held to, right? So it is best for you to go back and say, okay, ask your doctor, what does this mean? And if that doctor is not able to give you an answer, go to another doctor. And I know sometimes you lose a job, all kinds of things happen. But the last thing you want is what some of you guys are doing, going, hey, should I get on this medication, when you end up with vision loss because of the medication. Okay? I know it's difficult, but it is better to be safe than sorry. All right?